Today we're going to look at Osirium's Privilege Endpoint Management product, or PEM. I'll give you a brief idea of what PEM does and why, then we'll have a demo to show what PEM is like for the end user and also how we administer it. The problem we set out to address with PEM is the fact that over the years many companies have ended up with end users having local administrator rights on their Windows machines. Because of the heightened risk to the environment if a virus or ransomware hits while the victim is running as an administrator, and often as the result of an audit finding, this isn't acceptable. There are different ways the situation came about. Maybe the user was made a member of the local administrators group to run a particular application, or perhaps the user was given the credentials of a local administrator account for some reason that no one can really remember. Another common situation is that your help desk is spending time doing things on behalf of users because you don't want to give the users full local admin rights to do those things for themselves. What you can see on the screen here is a PEM administrator logged into the PEM admin interface in the background, and on top of that you see a Windows end user, George B, logged into his Windows 10 desktop. George used to be a local administrator, but we've had to take his admin rights away, so he's now a standard user. With PEM, we can allow George to have local admin rights only when needed and only for specific programs. George likes to run the disk defragmenter, which requires admin rights, so we'll use that as an example of how PEM can allow George to still get things done without him being a local admin all the time. If George runs the defragger today as a non-administrator, you can see the user account control badges appear, and if he tries to continue, he's prompted for an administrator's credentials, which he doesn't have. We've installed the PEM agent on George's machine, and we've also configured a PEM server connected to Active Directory. The PEM server itself has been put into what's called learning mode, which means that George will be allowed to run anything he wants as an administrator if he right-clicks it, selects Run as Administrator using PEM, and enters his own username and password when prompted. The key thing here is that he'll only be an admin while running those programs, not all of the time. PEM's learning mode makes it easy to get from your current state to where you need to be with minimal impact on your users. If George now runs the defragger as administrator using PEM, he'll see a fairly self-explanatory message telling him to enter his own username and password at the prompt that appears after he clicks OK. I'll just type in George's username and password, and now you can see that the UAC badges have disappeared, and this program only, is running as an administrator. So George can click on Analyze or whatever he wants to do. If we now go over to the PEM administrator screen and look at the elevation log, we can see that George was allowed to run the defragger via an automatic elevation. We can also see that because PEM is in learning mode, if we now look at the Policies tab, a policy has automatically been created, allowing George and any other users in the PEM Users Active Directory group to run the defragger as administrator. Once we've run for a reasonable amount of time in learning mode and we've reviewed the auto-created policies, maybe deleting some we don't want users to have, we can switch learning mode off, and if George or any other user in the group hits an issue, they can use normal company processes such as calling the help desk and logging a ticket to have a specific policy added. When we're happy with the policies for George's group, we move on to the next group that we want to create a policy set for by enabling learning mode for them, and so on. I'll just switch off learning mode for George's group now. Learning mode, as we've just seen, is used to automatically create policies as we implement PEM, and there will be occasions where we'll need to manually create specific policies, so we'll go through an example of that now. As time goes on, it turns out that for whatever reason, George needs to run the event viewer to look at the security logs for his machine. If he tries to do that, you can see that he's not allowed to see the security log because he's not an administrator. so we need to create a policy for him in PEM so he can elevate himself to run Event Viewer as administrator. What I'll do now is go back to the PEM admin console, and as you can see, if I click on Create Policy, we can specify the file path, hash and signer of the programs we want users in a particular AD group to be able to run with admin rights. I'll just add the PEM users group and type eventviewer.exe in the file path just for the demo and leave everything else blank. The policy I've just created will be pushed down to George's machine at the next group policy update interval. Now, if I try to run Event Viewer again as administrator using PEM, and then to George's username and password, I can see the security log OK. If I go back to the PEM admin console elevation log, you can see that George was allowed by policy to run Event Viewer as an administrator. To recap, PEM allows non-administrators to run specific programs as administrators. This means they don't have to be in the local admins group all the time, don't need secondary accounts with admin rights on their workstations, and don't need to hassle the help desk when they need things doing. PEM reduces your attack surface while still allowing users to get their jobs done.